FAU's home opener takes place tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the new Flagger Credit Union Stadium. Welcome back to the Night Owls, your FAU spot for all things FAU sports. We are going to continue to be bringing you content. And guys, we've been bringing you daily content, haven't missed a day for the last 4 weeks, but we did take a 3-day break from Monday to today. Not too much to talk about Florida A&M besides this one preview. They only opened up practice one day this week, and we brought you coverage on that over on X. Didn't think it was worth making a full episode on it here. So let's get into the preview for today's video. And from now on, we're going to be bringing you content every single day. We won't miss one day because FAU, they're not going to be playing an FCS opponent again this year. So there's going to be a lot more to preview with other teams. So I'm going to start out with my FAMU deep dive, going into the key guys on this Florida A&M roster. So let's start out with their quarterback. RJ Johnson is going to be their starting quarterback, and he is a redshirt sophomore who went 17 for 32 for 183 yards and got sacked 3 times in Florida A&M's opener, where they just scored 9 points. He didn't have a great game, however, he didn't turn the ball over. But this isn't a guy who can dice up this FAU defense, because Malik Washington had trouble doing that in the first quarter alone. The Maryland quarterback, who's the number 5 recruit of quarterbacks in the country last year, the number 5 freshman QB, according to 24/7 Sports. And he was able to, not turn the ball over, but he only completed 53% of his passes, which is subpar for those that don't know. You want to try to complete at least 66% of your passes. Thirds complete is a pretty good stat line, but when you're 53%, that is not good. That's just nearly half. And I think that FAU could definitely pose some problems for him, because the offense was only able to score 9 against Howard's defense. Let me say that again. Howard, an FCS Howard. I don't think that they are going to score 7 points against FAU. So I certainly think that FAU might have a shutout, might be able to get the first shutout of the season. This is a Brett Dewhurst defensive-led team that I love, and I've talked about it so much. I was really high on the defensive line coming into the season. The interior, Coach Kelly is so high on, with DeGette, Langston. On the outside, you got Denard and Batiste. So the defensive line is one of the most veteran type of groups in all of the conference and all of the position groups of FAU. The secondary was a little bit disappointing. Derek Rogers let up a couple touchdowns. Therese Reed had a few big tackles. But I don't think that we played that great. Tyler Stolsky, he was not what we thought he was going to be. However, he did deal with an injury and played through an injury, so that's something to take off. But this defense is really going to be able to pose a tough time and maybe cause some pressure, because in the trenches, FAU, every position is stronger than FAMU's. This is just a different level of football. Maryland, that's a Power 4 school. They are on a different level than the G5. Besides, if you're Tulane, who, yes, they beat Northwestern, who's in the Power 4 by 17 points, by 3 scores. But if you're in the Power 4, you're going to mostly beat a G5. If you're in the FCS, you're mostly going to lose to a G5. So the way I see football, you got the Power 4, the G5, the FCS, and every single position group on this team, FAU is probably better than. maybe the running backs, but they're not going to go up against each other. And we'll talk about the running backs a little bit later in the show. I just think, every single recruit out of the state of Florida, every single one of them who was offered Florida A&M scholarship and an FAU scholarship, unless they are a starter and promised a significant more amount of playing time at FAMU, they are choosing FAU. But if they wouldn't get playing time at FAU, they wouldn't be as important for the FAU roster. If you're a recruit, you get full playing time, starter, day one starter at FAMU, day one starter at FAU. You're taking FAU. The opportunities on this schedule are so much better. You have a chance of making the college football playoffs by winning your conference pretty much, because we all know that the best American team this year is going to make the college football playoffs. So that's where I see it. And to get back on point, sorry about if I went on a little rant, but RJ Johnson is a guy who can run the football. He can use his legs for sure. He's very mobile, but I think that FAU is going to contain him at all levels of the game. Charquez Lee, Tyler Stoltzky, Robert Lee, Leon Hart, those linebackers are going to be crucial out on the perimeter to stop him with his legs. And RJ Johnson won a position battle coming into the season. So he did actually have to fight for this QB1 spot, which means that they're not as confident in him as we thought. But overall, I think that FAU will get the better of him. Now let's talk about the running game, because this is what FAMU's bread and butter is. Thad Franklin, this is a guy who I actually used to cover pretty closely when he was at University of Miami, when I was with a Miami website where we did podcasts. Obviously, I still love the Canes. FAU is my primary team, but overall, they're not competing for the CFP. You got to show some respect to the local Canes, just 45 minutes south. And when I was doing Cane stuff, I saw Thad Franklin a lot, and he was very active in the running game for them. He had 23 carries in 2021 for the Canes for 172 yards. And in 2022, his sophomore year, he had 50 carries for 209 yards, where he averaged 4.2 yards a carry in 2022 and 7.5 yards a carry. 7.5, I'll say that again, in 2021. So pretty impressive for him. Last year at Florida A&M, he had 120 carries for 653 yards, and that showed that he was their primary back. He's returning again, and in the receiving room, he also can catch out of the backfield. But in last week's game, he was not able to find those gaps, find those holes. He only had 13 carries, which we've seen him get more than that for just 37 yards. That's 2.8 yards a carry. So therefore, I think they're going to have no problem with Thad Franklin. But if there is someone who could surprise FAU and make a lot of problems for this defense, it's Thad Franklin. They also have Levante Somerset. He's a guy who has been, pretty solid overall in fall camp. He was with them in last year and had 66 carries for 497 yards, nearly 500 yards on the ground, 7.5 yards a carry last season. Last game against Central Michigan, 9 carries, 37 yards. So he is going to be, again, a problem. They have a two-headed monster. We were expecting a three-headed monster. We kind of abandoned the running game last week, but Levante Somerset and Thad Franklin could definitely pose a lot of problems for this FAU team. Looking at the receivers for Florida A&M, it is not the greatest of rooms in all of football. They do have a guy in Jalen Rogers, who was the number one target last week, 4 catches, 51 yards. He is a Tulane transfer, so I guess, FAU should try to target him. But the thing about FAMU's receivers is they had a bunch of guys catch passes, and that's something that FAU has to contain. 8 guys caught passes last week. So they have a bunch of guys who they could turn to and throw to. They don't just have one guy who's going to dominate on the defensive side of the ball. They do have 2 really experienced guys. In specific, Antonio Kamen, he got a sack last week and was able to get after the quarterback. He is someone who FAU should watch out for, 3 sacks last year. And then they have the FIU transfer, Later Kinsler. This is a guy who's been playing college football for a very long time, to say the least. And he had also a sack last week against Howard, and he had a solo tackle as well. So Later Kinsler is going to be one of those guys on defense who could get after Caden Velkamp. So my preview here for the game is that FAU should be throwing the football, because the defensive line is the strength of FAMU's defense. I want to see what Caden Velkamp can do. I don't want to see 15 throws, to Easton Messer, those screen throws out wide. I want to see what Caden Velkamp can really do down the field, target Assad Wasim, maybe Jay Sean Platt. You could go to Dom Henry. There's so many options on this team. Jabari Smith, someone who can really create separation deep, over 18 yards a catch for him last year. Don't throw these screens that are backwards passes to Easton Messer to see what he could do on the yards after catch. This is an FCS school that is vulnerable in the secondary. So Caden Velkamp, throw the ball deep. Will FAU cover the 36.5? This is a tough one, a very tough one. So where I am with this is I was expecting the spread to be a little bit more even, if that's the word. I thought that FAU, they would maybe give up and be favored by 24, 25, 36.5 is a lot of points to cover. And Florida A&M's defense held Howard to 10. However, they were only able to score 9. So I get what these guys are saying. They're saying that FAU is going to shut out Florida A&M, and can FAU be able to score 36 points? If that's the case, I think FAU can score 42 points. I'm going to say that FAU scores 42 points in this game, no matter what FAMU scores. So that would mean if they want to cover, they have to either hold them to 6 points or less if I'm doing my 5 points or less. And that isn't easy. It's not easy to hold any team to 5 points or less. But overall, I think that FAU can do it. I see like a 42-3 type of game. But when you look at the last FCS school FAU played, it was against Monmouth, and they won 42-20. Yes, Monmouth is better than Florida A&M. Monmouth is a team where they can score points. But I think FAU is going to win this football game 42-3. I think FAMU gets a field goal. They kicked 3 field goals last week, and their kicker made them. So I like FAU 42-3. Let's talk about why this is a must-win game for the Owls. So you're coming off a loss to Maryland. You're 0-1 heading into tomorrow's game. This is an FCS school. Let me remind you, every single recruit is choosing FAU over Florida A&M. If Florida A&M's head coach got offered by FAU tomorrow, he would choose it because of the facility difference, because of the competition different, because of the history of the two programs, because of the overall level in the conferences of the two programs. FAU has a chance to compete for the American Conference every year. And if FAMU wins every single game on their schedule, what will they do? They'll get in the FCS. So I will say this again: FAU's got to win this game. You're favored to win this game by 30 plus points. If FAU even wins by like 14, 17, I don't think that we make a bowl game. I think we have to make a statement, and I think this is probably one of the more crucial games on the schedule, because we're going to see really how good FAU is against competition that isn't that good. If they win this game 53 or say 63-3, I'm going to be very ecstatic. So, give me FAU in this one, 42-3. Make sure you guys are there. Home opener. We need the crowd there. Be loud, be proud, and go Owls. We'll be live for tomorrow's game. Hudson Friedman will be bringing you that play-by-play live reactions. You can react with him. But that'll do it for today's show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, please. We would really appreciate if you guys could subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and follow me over on X at JJMetsFAU. Thank you guys so much for watching, and go Owls.